Hey, family. Have my Facebook family, my Instagram family joining me. I hope that you all are doing well tonight. I hope that everyone is well. I hope that you guys can hear me clearly. As you know, I had to put my air on tonight because it's a little hot. So I definitely had to throw on some air tonight to make sure that I didn't pass out as we have this very, very important conversation tonight. I am excited to be back with you all. As you jump on, if you can do me a favor and please go ahead and share the stream, share it on Facebook, share it on YouTube, share it on Instagram. I want to get people into this conversation because we're going to be talking about a very important conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about the summertime unwind and transitioning out of quarantine. Many of us got into quarantine. We just kind of jumped into it. But transition is important even when we're transitioning out of something. And so we're going to have that conversation tonight. Hi, Richard. Thank you for joining me. Please make sure you go ahead and share the stream. Getting excited to be with you all. While I wait a second just to see how everybody is doing, just jump on. Tell me how you guys are doing tonight. How are you doing tonight? How are you holding up? We are officially in summertime. I think summer started like 2 days ago or something like that. How are you guys holding up in these times? All the craziness with the coronavirus, the pandemic, the civil unrest that's going on in our country. How are you guys holding up while we wait for some other people to jump on? Let me know. I want to hear from you tonight. Hi, Ms. D. I see that you joined me on Instagram. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Miss Emily. Thank you. Listen, NK8 Salon and Nail Spa hooked me up. I had to be the first one through the doors to get my appointment to get my hair done, okay? This is a part of my summertime unwind. Oh, please be safe, D. I see that you're driving. Please be safe. Thank you, Emily. How you doing, lady? All right, y'all. All right. Civil unrest is a good way to describe how I'm doing. Wow. I completely understand that, Richard. It's just so much going on, um, you know, and we have to, even in spite of all that is going on with the world and with the civil unrest, try to continue to trudge through anyway. It's hard, it's difficult to do, but I'm just a firm believer that everything that we need to get through the most difficult times in our life, we already have it on the inside of us. All right. And so I want to encourage you all before we jump into our topic for tonight. I know that these times have been hard for many different reasons, but just remember that everything you need to get through these hard times, you already have it on the inside of you. The key is to do the work that is going to be necessary to pull it up and to unlock it. And so I completely understand, but I'm definitely here to support you guys and to cheerlead you through that, which is a good segue and a good transition into tonight's topic. So first of all, I want to say welcome again to everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am excited for tonight's conversation. I have some really good material for you guys tonight as we're talking about the summertime unwind and as we're talking about transitioning out of quarantine. We have been through some crazy times over these last couple of months, and I want to make sure that as we go into summertime, this is going to be a different summer for many of us. This is going to be summers just look different, right? It smells different, it feels different, it looks different. And so I want to make sure that my people, that my tribe are able to go into the summer with the right mindset of transition. Oftentimes when we think about transition, we don't think about how we transition into something, but we also have to transition out of things. And so tonight's topic of conversation, we're going to talk about transition. We're going to talk about what transition means. And we're also going to talk about some healthy ways that we can transition out of this quarantine and keeping our self-care and our wellness at the forefront. So if you guys have questions, if you have comments, feel free to drop it in the comments. Feel free to join the conversation with me. I want to know you guys' thoughts. But we are going to be talking about the Summertime Unwind tonight. Listen, I'm so excited that summer is here. If anybody is like me, summertime is my favorite time of year. I love the summer. I love sunshine. I love hot days. If anybody knows me, you know that I love the heat. But I love sunshine. I love the heat. I love hot days. I love the thought of going to the beach and family barbecues and just being able to enjoy all of that wonderfulness as it pertains to the summer. But as I explained earlier, this is a different kind of summer for all of us, right? We are still slowly but surely, depending on where you are, right? Because I'm in New Jersey, but I know people are in different states in different part of the country, even different parts of the world, right? Depending on where you are, the restrictions where you are lifting at a different caliber. Hey, Sharice, thank you for joining me. Make sure you share the stream. The restrictions are lifting at different rates and at different levels and different calibers, right? We had some states that opened up weeks ago, and then we find ourselves that there was a spike in the virus, and so here we are, and they're starting to shut down again. And so it looks very different for all of us. Hey, Bria, thank you for joining me. I see you join me on Instagram. And so what I want to talk about tonight is understanding transition. We were forced into the quarantine. That was part of the transition. None of us willingly woke up on March 17th or March 16th or something like that. And I believe was the first day, at least in New Jersey, of the decision to shut things down to quarantine. We were forced into it. It was a forced transition into quarantine. And we had to make quick life adjustments, right? We didn't really necessarily have time. Like I remember leaving work. I believe it was a Thursday night. I remember leaving work and getting home and being really tired that night. And I went home and then getting a text message saying like, hey, we don't come into work tomorrow, right? And then I was preparing to go back to work on Monday. Then I get a message and say, listen, sit tight. You ain't going back to work, right? And they were telling us, get everything that you need to get out the building. You know, we were sending coworkers in to grab our laptops and things because we were forced into this transition. Now we have to focus on transitioning out, right? While we were forced into the transition, we can actually do our work to transition out of it in a healthy way, right? Because we can see the transition coming. And so one of the things I want to talk to you all about tonight is understanding transition and what transition is. We all hear transition, right? We know what the word means. We understand the concept of transition, but I really want to break it down a little bit tonight because the reality is, as much as we know what the word transition means and as much as we kind of understand what it is, the reality is more people struggle with transition because of the change that it brings on than we are willing to admit. Some of you may not know, as a therapist, there's a host of, like, sometimes I'll have clients come into my office, they're seeking counseling, and maybe they're not necessarily have a really extreme diagnosable disorder, right? Maybe it's not clinical depression, maybe it's not PTSD, maybe it's not schizophrenia or something like that, right? But they're just dealing with these different phase of life issues, right? There's these phase of life issues that may be causing their mood to shift. There's these phase of life issues that may be causing anxiety, or there just may be these phase of life issues that they're trying to get together. We would label and diagnose those as adjustment disorders, right? Isn't that crazy that, well, okay, I shouldn't say crazy, but isn't it interesting that there is a whole set of disorders and it's just adjustment disorders? This is people who are just simply struggling with transitions in life. They're struggling with phases of life. Maybe you were single and you got married, right? That's a transition. Maybe you moved out of your parents' home for the first time. That's a transition. I get a lot of young adults, right, who are transitioning out of high school and transitioning into college. That causes a whole host of anxiety and stress, right? Transitioning from your teenage years to your young adult years, like, that's a transition nobody prepares you for. And so we have to understand and know how to do transition so that we can do it the healthy way, right? And we can make sure that we stay on top of it. Because if we don't do it the healthy way, what will happen is you will find yourself falling into this deep hole trying to climb out because you haven't been able to transition healthily. That's right, Uncle Sean. Thank you for joining me tonight, right? And so one of the things I want to talk about tonight is transition and understanding it. So what exactly is transition? Okay, so this is the Webster's definition of transition, then we're going to break it down. The Webster's definition of transition is the process or period of changing from one state or condition to another. So again, when we talk about transition, we are talking about the process or state is the process or a period of time where we're changing from one state or condition to another, right? And so one of the easiest ways, I guess, that we can understand that is think about water, right? Water goes through a transition when we put it in the freezer, right? It gets to a temperature of at least 32 degrees or below, and then it is able to solidify and it changes into ice. That is a transition for water, right? The same is true on the opposite end. If you take that ice out of the freezer and you heat it up to 33 degrees or more, right, it's going to melt. That is a transition as well. Well, for many of us, we go through the same kind of transitions. There are so many different phases of life transitions. I mentioned some a little bit earlier, where we go from one state or condition to another. We can go from married to single, right? We can go from single to married. We go from being a child to being a teenager to being an adult. And even when we reach adult, we go through phases, right? Because it's one thing to be a young adult, but then once you go from young adult, you're going to eventually reach middle age, right? And then going from middle age to becoming an elderly adult. Those are all transitions that we have to go through. What happened during this quarantine, we were forced to transition. Usually, we try to get ahead of transition as people. We don't like when transition creeps up on us and it just overtakes us. We try to have a leg up and a foot up on transition because transition means change. And as people, we do not like change. If somebody, come on, y'all, drop me a comment or something. Let's be honest. We don't like change. Change is hard for us. We get comfortable. We like comfort. Am I the only one? Somebody drop me a comment and let me know. I know I'm not the only one. I like to be comfortable. I like to know where I put my sheets and towels. I like to know where everything on my desk goes. I like to know what route I'm taking to work, right? I like comfort. We like comfort as people. And when we're forced to change, we don't like it because the truth of the matter is it throws us off our rhythm. And we don't like to be thrown off of our rhythm, right? So we prefer routine because routine grounds us. When we have a routine, we're grounded and it establishes stability. So what change and transition does is it gets us in a place where we can't be grounded and it destroys our stability because as people, we like stability. We like to know that we're stable, right? That's why job security is so important and finding a career where you feel like you can grow and you can be in because stability means security. And as people, we like security. Change and transition disrupts your sense of security, right? When things begin to change up and things begin to transition, we don't know whether I'm secure where I'm at. And so it disrupts us. Our routines, listen, a lot of times I've said this before, and I think it's a really powerful way to put it is that when we're dealing with those who have what's called developmental disorders, right? The IDD population, those who may have autism or any of those type of spectrum disorders, right? Routine is everything to them, right? Because it keeps them on track. They know what time they're doing certain things. It helps them to have a sense of control. We only think about routine as it pertains to those people and as it pertains to children. But come on here, adults, routine is important for us too. Why? Because routine helps us to be stable, right? We all have a routine. And the crazy thing about it is we establish these routines without even thinking about it, right? Think about it. I want you to think about your daily routine. What's the first thing you do when you get up? You know, we all have a routine. When I get up, I'm automatically going to the bathroom. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to pick up my phone. This is sad, y'all. But one of the first things I do is pick up my phone and see what's the latest on Facebook and see what emails I have. You know, opening up my Bible app, reading my Bible app and praying. There's certain routines that we do. We don't even think about them. But because they become so ingrained, they help us to be able to navigate our day, right? And that's why that's why transition is hard because we get thrown off with our navigational system, right? Our personal navigational system. And so what transition is about, as the reason why it's difficult is because we like to be in control. That is the bottom line of it. Come on. Do I have any control freaks watching me tonight? I know I'm not the only one. I am a control freak. Ask my husband, or don't ask my husband. Don't ask my husband at all, right? But I like to be in control, right? That's why I don't like flying. I would rather drive, and most places I drive to, I want to be the one to drive because I can control my vehicle, right? Like I know how to whip it, if something go wrong, I could whip it around, like whatever. I like to be in control. But when you get on a plane, you give up your control. You have no other choice but to sit back and pray to God that your pilot is having a good day and that he's focused, he ain't tired, and he knows what he's doing, right? Because there's a sense of control that you have to relinquish, right? And so change and transition requires you to relinquish your control. And we don't like that as people. We struggle with relinquishing our control, right? Because we want to be in full control. And so there's this English professor who wrote a book. He wrote a book called Bridges. His name is William Bridges, excuse me. His name is William Bridges, and he's an English professor. And he wrote a book called Transitions in the 80s. And I just wanted to guide you guys through some of the things he talks about transitions because it is so powerful what he has to say about it, right? He says that there are 3 discrete phases of transitions. So these are not phases that are in your face or, necessarily stages that are in your face. But he says that there are 3 discrete stages of transition. Stage 1 begins with an ending. Stage 2 ends with a beginning. And stage 3 is an uncomfortable neutral zone in the middle where personal growth is taking place. I'm going to say that again because that was a mouthful. So the first discrete stage of transition is that something begins with an ending. Then he goes on to say that stage 2 is that something ends with a beginning. And then he says that the third stage is that uncomfortable neutral zone in the middle of the beginning and the ending where personal growth is taking place. So let me break this down. This is so good, y'all. This is so good. Let me break this down. So he says that the first discrete stage is that begins with an ending. So in order to transition, you are beginning a thing by ending a thing. Oh, this is so good. In order to transition, you are beginning a thing by ending a thing. Endings are hard, whether they are planned or abrupt. Even with welcomed endings, we have a difficult time navigating it because it means a new normal has to be established. Many of us have a hard time with endings, and it doesn't matter what the ending may look like. Again, even if it's a welcome ending, let's say you were in an abusive relationship, right? It's a welcomed end. You want it to end. You want that thing to come to an end, right? And so people think about, oh, this relationship is ending. I'm finally out. I'm finally getting free. But the reality is that there's a transition out because even though you may want to be free from a thing, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job or something else, you got used to it. You got used to that thing that you want to end. And so now you have to change your mindset. Now you have to make some shifts. Now you have to make some adjustments. And so the first stage to transition is understanding that you are beginning with an ending. You're not actually just beginning a new thing. You're actually beginning by ending a thing. That is your first stage of transition. Then he goes on to say, and stage 2 is it ends with a beginning. So again, we come out of an ending and we begin this new phase of life. We begin this new thing, right? But then he says, when you are beginning to transition out of a thing, you are ending with a beginning. So what do I mean? Beginnings are often exciting, right? Beginnings can be very exciting. Many of us, like if we're getting a new job, like some of us are excited about it, or if you buy a new house, or if you're expected parents and you're expecting a new bundle of joy, or if you have a new relationship. Listen, there is nothing better than new relationships for me, right? I love specifically new love. I remember when I was dating my husband and we were just dating. It was so exciting. I don't know about y'all. Maybe it's just because I'm girly. Maybe it's just the girliness in me, but like I was so excited. Like we used to talk all night. I couldn't wait until the next day just to see him. There's just something so amazing about the beginning of a relationship and getting to know a person, right? And so sometimes beginnings are really excited. But then sometimes beginnings are anticlimactic. Sometimes a beginning is, okay, I'm starting a new job. Maybe it's not necessarily my career job. So I'm not 100% excited about transitioning into the job, but it's a beginning and it's something that I have to do, right? And so beginnings can be anticlimactic. And although some people may feel invigorated by beginnings, often it takes time to be adjusted to a new identity or situation, right? And so the difficult part with a beginning is that while I may be excited for it, it also means that I now have to adjust to a new situation or new identity. And so if I am single and I become married, I have to adjust with now living with this person, but I also had to adjust from now being Mrs. McCord, right? I lived so many years of my life as Chanel Great, right? As the single great girl. But then what happened was I got married and Mrs. McCord couldn't necessarily operate in the same way that Miss Great did. Right? Because I had to consider my husband. I had to figure out what my new identity was. Heck, I had to get used to my new name, right? I had to get used to writing Chanel McCord instead of Chanel Great down on the paper, right? It's a new identity, right? And then also it's a new situation. So even though things are exciting in the beginning of a thing, it's also something that we have to adapt to and it takes time to adjust to. And I don't care what it is, even if it is a welcomed beginning, we have to take the time to adjust to it, right? And then it goes on to say, even a beginning considered positive by societal standards, like getting married or having a child or getting promoted, can be extremely stressful as those affected become attuned to unfamiliar landscape, right? And so basically all that is saying is that as you're adjusting, as you're transitioning, you have to get attuned and used to unfamiliar landscape. It's like when you move, when you move, I like going different places, right? I'm that type of person. When I go, right, Uncle Sean, it's not easy dealing with a great, that is for sure. But I'm that type of person, like when I go on vacations and things, I like to explore the town, right? Not just the vacation tourist area. Like I want to see how the locals live. Now, some places you got to be careful with that. I don't suggest y'all do that anywhere. Some places you got to be careful, but I like to see how the people live, right? I like to see what's going on around it, right? But it also comes with a sense of anxiety because it is unfamiliar landscape. It is unfamiliar landscape, right? I don't know what's going on. If something goes wrong, I don't necessarily have my bearings or whatever the case is. Never go anywhere without your GPS. But anyway, I have to transition to, getting my bearings or whatever because it's unfamiliar landscape. And so even in that, it's a transition that we have to get used to, right? And then he says the third stage is an uncomfortable neutral zone in the middle of the ending and the beginning where personal growth is taking place, right? So the third stage is actually happening in the middle of the ending that we talked about and the middle of the new beginning that we talked about, right? And so this is a neutral, uncomfortable middle phase that he talks about. But this is the place where personal growth takes place in transition. Oh my goodness, this is so good, y'all. It is in that neutral, uncomfortable zone where the personal growth is taking place when you transition out and when you're transitioning into a thing, right? The article said it's an empty in between time. So the author William Bridges describes this neutral zone as an empty in between time when everything feels as though it's up for grabs. You don't quite know who you are or how you're supposed to behave. I'm going to say that again because it is so good and that is so powerful. He says that neutral zone in the middle where personal growth is taking place is an empty in between time when everything feels as though it's up for grabs and you don't quite know who you are or how you're supposed to behave. So think about the quarantine. Think about that first day when we were forced into quarantine, and then the stores were shut down around us, the gyms were shut down, the libraries were shut down, and pretty much all you could do was get groceries and step outside your front door for some front air, right? When we went into this, the ending that we had coming out of our freedom, but then we all entered this neutral in between, empty in between zone, right? Where personal growth had to take place, where we had to stop complaining and we had to make the best of our situation, right? This quarantine, at some point, you had to stop complaining. Yes, first they told us, oh, it's just going to be 2 weeks. We're just going to lock down for 2 weeks. Well, then 2 weeks turned into 4, and then 4 turned into 6, and then 6 turned into 8, and then 8 weeks turned into 9 weeks, and we were 3 months in quarantine, and we're still transitioning out of it. At some point in that, we had to make a personal decision to grow up and adjust to the transition and what was going on around us, right? This empty in between place, right? We had to figure out, okay, how am I going to behave in this? There were so many things in the beginning of the quarantine where people were just like, oh, well, now you got time to build a business. Now you got time to do that. There's no excuses, right? But then once we got about to week 3, people was kind of feeling like, I'm not motivated to build no business. Wait, what is going on here? I've lost my freedom. We had to make some quick adjustments, right? We had to make some quick adjustments in a moment. An audible was called and we had to do something about it, right? And so it's in this neutral zone where the growing up takes place. It's in that neutral zone when you make decisions about your behavior, where you make decisions about your attitude, where you make decisions about how you're going to do this thing or not. It is in that neutral in between zone and the transition. That is the place where personal growth takes place. That is the place where you start to make some real decisions about, okay, all right, we're in this transition. I may have lost my job. I have to do something. I have to adjust. I can't just sit here and cry every day. I have to figure out how I can make some money, right? Or I had this issue of concern. I can sit down on my behind and not do anything about it. Or in that neutral in between zone, I can make some quick decisions about my adaptability, right? And try to establish a new routine and try to establish a new normal within the situation, right? And so those are the 3 stages of transition, right? And he goes on to say that although no one can escape life's inevitable transitions, people's coping styles vary depending on a variety of factors, from their biology to their family of origin. And that's what makes transition difficult. That's what makes transition tricky, right? Because with transition, we know that something is ending, we know that something is beginning, and we know that there's this neutral in between time, right? Where I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on. But the key to it all is your ability to cope. How are you coping in transition? What are you doing to cope with the uncomfortable in between? What did you do to cope with the forced ending that you had to make? Or maybe it was a welcome ending, but you still had to cope with it. What are you doing to cope with the new beginning that you have to make, right? What is coping? Coping is our ability to handle and manage situations, right? It is our ability to handle and manage life's tough situations. And so you're either going to cope constructively or you're going to cope destructively. What is constructive coping are those positive things that we do to help us to handle and manage a situation. So some people lean on exercising to get out stress. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's listening to music, maybe it's going for a run, maybe it's going to counseling, maybe it's talking, with safe people who are in your life. But then you also can cope destructively, right? What is destructive coping? Destructive coping is turning to drugs. Destructive coping is self-medicating. Destructive coping is using alcohol. Destructive coping is deciding, becoming violent, right? Becoming aggressive towards other people, even towards yourself, right? And so we have a decision to make in the midst of our transition to cope constructively and to cope well, right? Because transition is going to knock us off of our ability to feel 100%, I want to say safe, but yeah, 100% safe and 100% stable. And we have to make sure that we manage well, and we have to make sure that we cope well, right? So We weren't able to prepare for quarantine. We weren't. We were not able to prepare for the quarantine. The quarantine just hit like out of nowhere, like a ton of bricks. The quarantine just hit us. But while we weren't able to prepare for the quarantine, we can prepare for our transition out of it. We weren't able to prepare for quarantine because it was an abrupt ending to our norm and it was a forced beginning to a new normal. But we can prepare for the transition out of it. We can see the transition out. And for many of us, we're just going to think that I'm just going to transition out. Oh, quarantine is over. Let me just get back to life as normal. Oh, let me start going back to the gym. Oh, let me go start hanging out. Oh, let me go to the restaurant and just start eating again. Oh, let me start doing this. It does not work that way. Hey, Aisha, babe, I'm still waiting for that order form. It does not work that way, y'all. It does not work that way. We have to prepare even to transition out of quarantine. Why? Because when we went into quarantine because a real serious situation and an issue. And many people are still not feeling comfortable with going outside and getting back to life as normal. And as a matter of fact, many of us reestablished a new normal in the last 3 months. Think about it, y'all. They say it takes 21 days to build a habit. Well, guess what? We were in quarantine for at least 90 of them joints, right? We was in quarantine for at least 90 days. And so at some point, the newness of the quarantine and the, oh my God, and the catching my bearings, at some point that washed away. And I'm going to say, just for the sake of it takes 21 days of habit, I'm going to say by day 21, most of us established and got comfortable and got used to the routine of being in quarantine because we knew that we were going to be there for a while, right? For most of us, that is the case. And so now we have to prepare ourselves again. So we had that abrupt ending, a new beginning. Guess what, y'all? Now we have another ending to prepare for a new beginning, right? As William Bridges, his stages are constantly working. It's so good. So now we have to prepare to transition out of this thing. And what I wanted to end this tonight by talking about is I want to talk about making sure that as you are transitioning out, that you have a mind of self-care and wellness established and in place for yourself. Don't think that, oh, I'm just going to get up. Now, for me, I did just get up and go get my hair done. Like, as soon as my hairdresser said that she had appointments, I was like the first one to book it. I was the first appointment out of quarantine, right? For me, I was willing to do that. I don't know that I'm going to nail salons. I don't know that I'm going to, eat out just yet. Movie theaters and stuff is not opening yet. I don't know if I'm going to the gym just yet. That's just me, right? That's just me. I can't speak to everybody else's situation, but I have to prepare myself eventually to transition back into life as normal. Here's what I don't want you guys to do. We have gotten so used to being isolated because I kept saying throughout this whole thing, social distancing was a cute way of saying isolation. And isolation is one of the key indicators in the mental health world that something is wrong. And so it's interesting that we were forced into isolation as people. And so this battle, they've been saying that the next part of this pandemic is going to be a mental health one. And we have to make sure that we are taking care of our mental and our emotional wellness as we transition out of this thing and preparing and going back into life. What we cannot do for the next year is decide that we're just going to stay cooped up in the house and we're not going to do nothing, right? We have to prepare to get back into life, right? And so there are certain things. You may have doctor's appointments that have to get rescheduled. Maybe just hanging out with your friends. I want to make sure that you guys are thinking about what is my transition plan out of quarantine, right? And so we want to talk about self-care. One thing I've been telling people is that self-care is not just beaches. Self-care is just not spas. Self-care is just not getting my hair done and getting my nails done, right? It's not just that. Self-care is also making sure you attend to you. Somebody drop that in the comments. Self-care is making sure that you attend to you. And that is going to look different for everybody on what they need to do. For some of us, I had to make a decision out of this thing. There's some doctor's appointments that I needed to make, right? I was sitting down thinking, I'm sitting around playing with my health. And so part of my self-care as I transition out back into life, as I transition out, is I'm making some doctor's appointments that I should have made a long time ago, right? I'm gonna make sure I stay on top of my health. For some of us, we have to make sure that you may want to call up a therapist, all right? We're coming up out of quarantine. Maybe you can't make the adjustment on your own. Maybe you can't transition on your own. Call up a therapist and get the help you need. Call up a mentor and get the help you need. Call up a coach and get the help you need, right? But I'm specifically pushing people to, I want to normalize counseling. I want us to normalize therapy. I want us to normalize talking to somebody who is a trained professional with the credentials within mental health and the appropriate licensing and the appropriate degrees to be able to help you to carry the weight of making the transition. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And so that may be part of your self-care and your wellness plan as you transition out. You may want to start looking at, okay, maybe I need to start seeing a counselor or a therapist so I can make sure that I transition out well. Because the truth of the matter is, y'all, the truth of the matter is this quarantine messed with a lot of us mentally and emotionally. This quarantine messed with a lot of us mentally and emotionally. For I saw anxiety at an all-time high when we started and we transitioned into this quarantine. Like people I've never seen anxiety in before, it was at an all-time high. Now, I believe that there were some things that were already there, but the quarantine was a triggering event, but anxiety went at an all-time high. And for people, for many different reasons, people were scared, right? Anxiety is also based in the unknown. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's next, right? People were losing jobs. People's family members were getting sick from this thing. People themselves were getting sick. People were stressed out financially. There were all kinds of things that were going on. We as a people, what we do is when we go through a situation, we normalize the unnormal and then we sit with it and we sit in our dysfunction. Come on, y'all. If anybody's going to be real and honest with me on tonight and admit that, when we go through something, we will normalize it as normal. We will normalize the abnormal as normal and then sit in our dysfunction. We have to stop doing that because guess what? We don't have to. You don't have to sit there and suffer in silence. Anxiety is not normal. Depression is not normal. While they are normal parts of life that happens, they are not normal. They are not supposed to be a part of us. And we accept it as a badge of honor. I hear people say all the time, yeah, that's just my anxiety acting up. No, we can handle that. We can manage that. So make sure as you're transitioning out, you are taking care of your mental health. You are making sure that you're staying on top of your emotional health. It is so important so that you truly can stay well, right? And so make sure you may have to say, listen, for some of us ain't getting no exercise in a minute. Right? Some of us ain't getting no exercise in a minute. We've been eating like trash. We ain't been eating healthy, right? And so maybe your transition out plan is you want to start looking at how you can take care of yourself, right? Taking care of your body. We are a mind, body, soul connection. We can't take care of our mental health and neglect our body, just like we can't neglect our mental health and take care of our body. It all works together. Part of your transition plan is to figure out how do you get your health back on track? How do you get your body movement? We don't realize how exercise, even if it's just going for walks and just going outside, it actually helps improve our mental health. So part of that self-care and that wellness, get your mental health together. Make sure you're getting your physical health together. And I'm not talking to you as one who has achieved. I'm talking to you as one who has to work on a plan to make sure, because I stopped with my weight loss goals and everything. I just kind of got crazy off track. And so now I'm working my way to get back on track, because when we go back to this normal, right? When we go back to this new normal, eventually, y'all, some people were working this entire time. Some people were not. Eventually, if you weren't working in the building, your job is going to eventually expect you to come back. You're going to have to go back. Eventually, we're going back to church. Eventually, we're going to want to hang out with friends again, right? There are all kinds of things that we're going to have to transition back into. And we want to make sure that not only is our mind and our emotions healthy, we want to make sure that our body is healthy so that we can pick up and we can keep going and transition well, right? We are going to have to look at a new normal of what self-care looks like. Self-care may look different in this season as we transition out as it's looked for you in the past. And guess what? That is okay. For me, I loved getting massages. I absolutely love getting massages. Right now, that's a little bit too close to comfort for me. So I may not be going to the spa to get massages, right? But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop my self-care. That means I'm going to have to establish a new normal of what self-care means to me. Be very careful. I want to say this, and I hope that you guys are listening. Please do not give up on self-care because you can't or choose not to do the things that you used to do. Let me say that again. Don't give up on self-care because I can't do the thing I used to. Okay, I can't necessarily go to the spa and get my massages like I used to, but there are other things that I can do for relaxation. I can put a diffuser with some essential oils on in my room. I can go on YouTube and I can put on a little spa music in the background. I can put my feet up. I can open the windows and let the breeze come in and I can relax. There is no excuse to get rid of self-care. The temptation will be, oh, well, I can't get my nails done, I can't get my hair done, or I can't go to the spa, or I can't necessarily go to the beach, or I don't feel comfortable doing those things, and so I'm just not going to do anything. Please do not do that. Make sure that you establish a new normal of self-care for yourself during this time and during this season, right? Take your time as you ease out. That is the next point. You don't have to rush outside for nobody. Tell them to come see me if they got something to say. Everybody is at different stages and phases with this thing. We were forced into it, and nobody should be made to feel like you are being forced out of it. If you are not comfortable doing certain things, if you're not comfortable going certain places, listen, that is okay. Take your time and ease out. Some things is going to be a little bit more of a forced thing out, but then some things, you can take your time and ease out. Wherever you are, that is okay, right? Part of your self-care is listening to you. Part of self-care is listening to what you need, what your body needs, right? My self-care. This gives me to go outside. I think my focus will go back to those. Right. That's good too, Aisha. That's good. She said, I've learned self-care in isolation. It scares me to go outside thinking my focus will go back to those outside things. That is really good. And so what we have to do is establish a new normal of self-care, right? Because if self-care was leading me back to those outside things, and I'm interpreting that for you, I know what you mean, but if self-care meant that I was going to go back to those outside things that I used to do, that means I have to establish a new normal. People, places, and things. I know Emily is on here. She's a recovery coach, right? And they teach you when you're going through recovery, you got to be mindful of the people, you got to be mindful of the places, and you got to be mindful of the things, because the people will lead you back down that path. Places, you can't go to the same places that will lead you back down that path, and you can't do the things that you used to do. And so essentially what I'm saying, as we're establishing a new normal in our self-care and wellness, is that we are reestablishing our people, our places, and our things. We have to do, we may have to get around some new people, we may have to go to some new places, and we may have to do some new things. And that is okay. You do what you have to do. But I want to make sure that you are easing yourself out, guys. If you're not comfortable, don't feel forced. Now, some jobs are expecting people to come back and stuff. There's certain things we can't do anything about, but there are certain things you can control. You don't have to go to a restaurant and sit there. You don't have to go to the movie theater. You don't have to go to the gym. There are ways where you can work out at home. There are ways where you can enjoy a movie on, your TV, or maybe you have a backyard set up and you have some friends come over and you guys sit 6 feet apart, right? Ease out of this thing, because what will happen is if you force yourself out, if you just run into it and you don't have a real plan, if you don't ease yourself out, you are going to see anxiety skyrocket. A lot of us started this pandemic with a lot of anxiety, right? And then it started to ease itself. If you don't ease your way out, and if you're not mindful and listening to yourself and what you can handle during this time, your anxiety will skyrocket. And so you want to make sure that you take your time and you slowly but surely ease your way out. There is nothing wrong with it, right? Go at your pace. This is not a race. It's not a race to be the first. Listen, when I heard Burlington, that's my store, y'all, right? I heard Burlington open up. Me and my husband was like, oh, we up in there. We about to go to Burlington. Until we saw the line was all long and they had a line outside. Listen, I'm not rushing back to Burlington. Burlington is going to be there in December. Burlington will be there in July, will be there in September. I don't need to rush out. Like, as people, we automatically think, oh, everything is open back up. Let me go, right? And so the restaurants are packed. Let me go. The restaurants are opening. The music rides are opening. Let me go. The beach is opening. Let me go. You don't have to rush out. The beach is still going to be there. The restaurant is still going to be there. The shopping stores are still going to be there. The spa is still going to be there. Go at your pace and take your time to make sure that your anxiety doesn't come back to a level where it's unmanageable for you. Because what's going to happen is, if anxiety spikes, you're going to put yourself back into a forced quarantine. You're going to put yourself back into isolation. Because you got used to doing that for the last 3 months, it's going to be easier for you to do that again. Don't do it to yourself. Go at your pace, take your time, ease on up out of it. It's not a race. And the last thing I have for you guys tonight, and establishing your self-care and then your routine, is reestablish routines for yourself. Reestablish routines for yourself, right? I was talking to some clients this week, and as they're preparing, churches are opening back up and some people were going for work. And I had so many clients saying to me, like, oh my goodness, like, I've been sleeping till like 10, 11 o'clock. I can't get up early anymore. Or, I used to shower every day. Now I shower every day. Don't judge nobody. Because y'all know y'all wasn't showering every day. Some of y'all was showering every other day. Some of y'all was showering maybe 2 times a week, right? But that's real. When you were in quarantine, you were forced home all day. You wasn't around anybody, right? And so one of the things I had to work through several of my clients was reestablishing routines for yourself, right? So as things are starting to open back up, as we're starting to have to wake up and go to work and do certain things or whatever the case is, you may have to put yourself back on the schedule. And so one of the things I said to one of my clients is making sure, listen, stop judging, Aisha. I see you judging. Don't be judging nobody. Don't be judging nobody, Uncle Sean. I see y'all. Stop judging people. Right. Right. Stop judging, y'all. But what you may have to do, if you're going to bed later and you're not waking up until late morning or waking up to afternoon, whatever it is, you may have to put yourself back on the schedule, right? You may have to force yourself to get in the bed by 9 o'clock and get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Even if you don't necessarily have anywhere to go, you want to make sure that you get your rhythm back. You have to get your daily rhythm back, right? We're going to have to do that in order so that we can make sure when we do have to go back to work, when we do start, going back to our normal everyday things, that we have our rhythm and we have our flow, right? And so that is my last tip for you on establishing self-care. And I just want to encourage y'all, use this summer to unwind. It's been a rough 3 months. It's been an interesting 3 months. It's been a depression filled, anxiety filled 3 months. It's been an interesting 3 months for a lot of people, y'all. It has been. And so I want to encourage you, as we are transitioning out, make sure that this summer you do something to take care of yourself. Make sure you do something to enjoy yourself, even if it is going to the beach, even if it is just sitting in your backyard, right? And having a non-alcoholic drink. I'll say a non-alcoholic drink, right? Whatever. Make sure that you are being intentional about enjoying yourself, right? And so that is important. You have to be intentional about enjoying yourself. I know for me, there's this feeling that always has come with summertime. Like, it's summertime, I'm like, oh, it's summertime, I'm so excited and all of that or whatever. But now I have to be intentional about enjoying myself because I got so used to being home. Like, it was crazy. I was sitting around the house today and I finished my clients early. I only had 2 clients today. I was done by like 4 o'clock or whatever the case is. And I'm like, oh, I got the rest of the day to myself. I ain't had my live until 9 o'clock. I'm like, I can go outside and, enjoy the sunshine. And I just sat in the house. I just sat in the house. And I realized for me, wow, you have gotten so used to just sitting in the house. I could have went to the store, I could have went for a walk, I could have went to a park, I could have went to visit my mama or something or whatever the case is, but I just decided I was going to stay in the house. And so I realized for me today that I have to be intentional about forcing myself out. And so tomorrow, I'm not going to just sit in the house all day. I don't have no clients tomorrow. We don't have Bible study until 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So I'm going to be intentional about getting out there, enjoying the day, reconnecting with some friends, taking a walk, doing whatever I have to do so that I can start to reconnect with life. My encouragement for you all tonight is to reconnect with life. Use this summertime to unwind, but remember, you're going to have to transition out of the quarantine just like we had to transition into it. Transition is hard, change is hard, but it is doable and it is not impossible. I believe in you guys. I am encouraging you guys and I'm with you all the way. And so I hope that this was helpful for you tonight. This is going to be my last live until August. I made the decision for myself. Part of my self-care is that when the quarantine happened, I was running hard. I was, doing a lot of stuff online and life groups and support groups and all of that, right, Uncle Sean, some of us were essential, right? And we appreciate you for continuing to work during this time. But I made the decision for me as part of my self-care is I'm going to take July off. I'm going to take July off. I'm not going to do no lives. I may be on social media sporadically. Maybe God will give me something and something will pop into my head and I'll jump on and I'll offer it to you guys. But we are stopping. We are stopping the Wellness Wednesday series just for now. It's time to take a break. I want to take time just to reconnect with me. I want to take time to reestablish my routines and making sure that I am taking care of myself in this time, right? And so we're just going to take a little stop. It's not over because I'm coming back in August hard. I got some interviews and different things for you guys, so don't worry. It's not over. But I hope that you also take time this summer to reestablish life and to reconnect with life as we transition out of quarantine. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. If it was helpful, please drop it in the comments. Let me know. Thank you all for joining me. If you have not shared, please go ahead and share. This is an important conversation, and I really believe that this conversation is going to help so many people. So please go ahead and share. I hope it was helpful. You all have a wonderful night. It was good talking to you guys, and I'll see you right back here, same back time, same back place, just in August as I enjoy my summer break. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.